5 years ago, I made a game about taking photos of fish in space. It was my third ever game jam, and it was right at the start of my game jam obsession. Recently, well, it was actually 8 months ago, I participated in a game jam where you had to recreate one of your previous games. So I chose to recreate one of my earliest games, just to see how far I'd come since first making that game. Here's how it went. My name is Ben, and I'm a game developer from Geelong, Australia. My original game essentially didn't have any graphics, so that was what I wanted to focus my attention on for the remake. I started by drawing the diver, your character, using a pixel art technique that I learned from Brandon James Greer, specifically his character art workflow and pose study video, which is linked in the description if you want to check it out yourself. I also spent a while drawing fish from a handful of different angles. In the original version, when the jam started, I went straight into making the character movement. This time, I focused on making it feel more like swimming by slowing down the turning speed and acceleration, but still being responsive and letting the player feel in control. The main thing I spent my time on in the original jam was the fish AI. I had a handful of different fish with multiple behaviors. I also had a grappling mechanic where you could grapple onto the fish and either pull them in, or if they were big enough, they'd pull you. I had this grand idea about tracking down these rare fish and grappling onto them and then taking photos of them while they're flinging you around. But since I was inexperienced, I massively overscoped and had to cut it right back. This time I scoped much smaller, but inevitably still overscoped a little bit. I focused entirely on the key aspect of the game, the photo taking. I implemented a much simpler fish AI and just gave the fish a random speed, size, and color to try to make them feel a little bit more unique. With the basics in place, I spent most of the time working on a system that actually showed you the photos that you took. In the original, I just saved a list of all the fish in your lens when you took the photo. It didn't feel great, but it was all I could do at the time. In the remake, I tried to actually draw the photo. I also drew a little border and styled it like a Polaroid photograph. As soon as I implemented this in the game, it started feeling way better. In the original, it was kind of fun to try to see how many fish you could line up in the camera, but actually being able to see the photos you took made it feel so much better. Another key feature I added was a slideshow at the end of the run that showed you all of your best photos. It made them feel a lot more meaningful, and it's a lot of fun just looking back at them all. The original jam was 10 days long, whereas this one was just a weekend. Seeing how much more I got done is just another indicator of how I've improved over the years. At this point, it was coming to the end of the weekend, so I had to wrap it all up into a coherent game. In the original version, you just got a set number of points for each fish that was in your photo. This time, I wanted to try to make it so that the quality of the photo you took actually reflected in the score that you got. So, I set a value for each fish based on its size, with the bigger fish being more rare and more valuable. Also, if the fish are facing away from you, you only get half points, and any fish that are outside of your range, in the background, you only get 1 point for each of them. I also added a macro multiplier, which doubles the score of the fish if they're right up close to the camera, and it gives a little pop-up when you get it too. One thing I didn't have time to add during the jam was a system that gave more clarity. I've been working on the game since the jam ended, and I've added a photo review system where you can see just how much value each fish adds to your total score. The jam was almost over at this point, but the game still felt really empty. I added some sound effects which helped a little bit, but I realized that the fish themselves were just not adding enough color. So I quickly drew some coral and scattered them around the place, gave them a random color and size, and as you can see, it just adds so much more life to the scene. Unfortunately, it added an unintended mechanic of the coral blocking the fish in your photos. So sometimes you'd get full value for fish that you couldn't even see because they were blocked by coral. I uploaded the game with a comfortable amount of time remaining, so I spent a bit of time making a title screen to try to make it feel more professional. I technically hadn't done any all-nighters, but I kinda did. On the last night of the jam, I went to bed and then woke up at like 3 AM so I could keep working on the game before the 8 AM deadline. At this point, it was like 6 AM, and in my sleep deprived state, I thought I'd made the most beautiful title screen ever. I mean, it's nice, but you know, it's not as amazing as I thought it was. Looking back on the 2 versions of the game, I personally see a huge improvement in my skills. I think the original version had a bit more depth in gameplay with the different types of fish, but the visual upgrade in the remake just made it feel so much more satisfying to play. I was pretty proud with the game that I made 5 years ago, especially at the time, but I'm just so much more satisfied with how this version came out. I would recommend this experience to everyone, not just in game development, but whatever skill or art that you do. Take something that you made early in your journey and then recreate it using all the skills and knowledge that you've picked up since then. It's a great way to see how far you've come and to imagine where you'll be in another 5 years' time. If you want to try out the game, you can play it right in your browser on my itch.io page. If you really want, you can play the original Jam version as well. I've recently made a Steam page because I'm planning on properly releasing the game this July, so if you're interested, I'd love if you could go over and give it a wishlist. Thanks so much for watching.